everyone? Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. We are back. We are back with another flagship show, and this time covering through what we've got left in the regular season for fantasy football. Just 4 weeks, so we're getting into December soon. Then we'll be starting the fight for fantasy titles. As always, I've got my illustrious co-host Danny. Danny, how are you, my friend? How is in the Emerald Isle?
Yeah, all good. Just seeing a shock result coming up in football, which is big for Ireland at the moment, but I know you're not interested in that one. Yeah, all good. Yeah.
Don't care about national football. It is a tournament, I care.
Yeah.
But when literally
You just
like 64 teams qualify for a World Cup now, no one cares.
No, I know. But it did he do in Ireland because they can never qualify for anything, even with 40 teams in it. It would be huge. But going back to what you're saying, what's name? I don't know about you, but do you ever get to the feeling where you could win most of your matches all week and still leave absolutely annoyed because there's that one league that you really want to win and you don't? And that's how I felt last weekend. I won most of the big matches, but went away really annoyed because I lost that one match that I really wanted to win.
I mean, I used to. I don't now. I guess this is the downside of playing in like close to 100 leagues is I don't actually like I accept the fact that I'm going to lose 20 a week. Like if I lose 20, that's a great week. Like it's like that. They're the kind of scales that you're playing on. But I think for me, it's like leagues of record. And I mean, there was one league I'm in with Joel, who hosts the NFL show, right? And so our mutual mate Tom, he had Jonathan Taylor. So like before 6 o'clock, I was like, I don't even need to look at this anymore. And I don't even look at fantasy football on Sunday night, right? I just watch the games.
Yeah, I'm the opposite.
Sorry, Vince. Vince and I are in a lot of the same like charity leagues, so he gets annoyed because he sees me just slightly poking ahead in a few of those.
But to be honest, do you know why that league is so annoying? It's the ones where there's relegation and promotion. So like if it's just you've had a bad season, like that's fine. But this is the one where if I have a bad season, I get relegated, and I've won this whole tournament the first year, so I feel like I want to stay in the top division. And there's obviously the two conferences and there's 4 divisions in each one. And I'm in the top one, and I want to stay in the top one. And I've just lost 4 games on the run because half my players got injured, and I've now gone from being in the playoffs to now in relegation. So I really need to get winning again.
Get trading, mate.
It's those ones. It's those ones that annoy me. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the BFFL where there's promotion relegation, I've been in like relegation trouble 4 years on the spin. So I do this thing where I basically trade all my picks to stay up, and then I have to draft like a crap team, and then I have to trade all my picks to stay up, and then I've pulled off some miraculous escapes. Like I was down pretty much last season, and I pulled it back, and then made some good trades to kind of only leave me 2 picks short, or 3 picks short. So I wasn't in as bad a state. So we should be all right this season. So then hopefully I can go into next season with a full complement of picks. Yeah. But that team's it's old now. It needs like a proper rebuild. So
I need 1 win to stay up, I think, in that to make sure.
Yeah. I think we're in a similar boat. So yeah, it's fine. But anyway, no one cares about our fantasy teams. Especially Vince. He really doesn't care about my fantasy teams at all. So week 11, we're at sort of a really pivotal part now. 4 weeks to go. Less teams on bye this week, but one of them is the Colts, Jonathan Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor puts a massive score up last week, and then he's going to be off this week. There's quarterbacks down with concussions, left, right, and center. No Jackson Dart, no CJ Stroud. We've got some quarterbacks returning from bye, like Patrick Mahomes, and we're just at this state now where I kind of feel like the elite performances haven't been coming, and it's just about trying to find good performance. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't elite performances. There are elite performances every week, but they seem to be fewer and farther between. And actually, you're just chasing baseline performance, and if you get that, you're probably in a good spot. Do you feel the same, or do you feel like it's different?
Yeah, and also harder to predict when they do come along as well. So, like, it feels like when you start the season, you've got a clear in your head of how things are going to go. But this year it just seems to be very volatile, and there's not really consistency. There's like teams might play well for a couple of games, and you think that's it now, and then the next thing they're back dropping points again, and it's very hard to call. And what I'm finding hard as well is that it's very hard to claw it back once it's gone at the moment, because it feels like everybody in your leagues are all clued into things a lot more. So, like, whereas before you could have a bad couple of results and you could go off and pick someone up and then all of a sudden change your team straight away. It's a lot harder to do that now. I feel like you've got to sort of pick the players before they actually even start, sometimes hoping that they're going to start, and then get into it because everyone else has picked them up otherwise.
I think that's half of it. I think there's two schools of thought here. One is that, yes, more people are clued in and plugged in. I think that's the leagues that we play in, where we are playing people that are a little bit more plugged in, that are a little bit more switched on in the leagues that we're in, because they're getting content from us and from other people. And I don't imagine home leagues are as that in depth. But I also feel that because of there hasn't been a lot of it, like when we do the tail of the tape of this season, I don't feel you're going to get many people putting up historically great seasons. JSN, Buka, Jonathan Taylor. I think we're kind of be reaching the end, right? So the players that there aren't these big breakouts, they haven't really occurred. We haven't seen rookies come in and really smash it. Ashton Jeanty hasn't really sort of set the league alight. Matthew Golden yet to really do much. Ted McMillan is what Ted McMillan I thought he would be, which was fine, volume based, but he's not pulling up trees. Like, I'm not saying he's bad, like he's performing, but you're not getting those electric stands out. And I don't think there's as many sort of big standout plays. There aren't as many standout performances. I think scoring across the league, I'd love to do a cross section. Feels to me that scoring is down. There's a lot of these scores of like there's a lot of team games. Like we saw 2 10-7s in prime time last week. Like it just feels like the defenses are winning this season. And maybe that will change later on, but it feels like that scoring has been sort of much, much lower. And again, I'm looking at the over-under totals for this week, and you're like, there aren't many.
You might know more about this than me, but what I would be very interested to know is how many snaps there are compared to the last few years, because it feels like teams are actually not necessarily even having as many snaps as what they used to have, and it's more tactical in a way that they're not just trying to throw it all the time or run all the time. They're actually slowing it down a bit and not having as many of them. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just feels that way at the moment.
That's a good question. I don't entirely know. I can go and run some analysis. It's not something that I can do in the short.
We can have a look at it another week, but it was just something that was puzzling me a little bit. It was like, as you say, there's not huge standouts, and I wonder if that's part of it, is that there isn't as many snaps as there was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it might be interesting that might be the case. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I haven't thought about it. It's something I do look at end of the season. I start to look at teams that are, manufactured additional plays. But there are some teams that are playing very, very slow. The Saints, Panthers, the Jaguars, who aren't running as many plays as you would expect.
And then there's other teams, isn't there, likes of the Chargers, not Chargers, the Rams, who are getting 4 tight ends involved, so that it's also getting spread across more players as well. There's certain teams there that normally you'd think it'd be the first 2 or 3 players, but instead there might be 5 or 6 of them. Like obviously we always say about the Green Bay is always like they've always got 5 or 6 players, no one real standout. They all spread them. But it feels like other teams are doing the same as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we're just in a point where I think innovation on offense hasn't really. There hasn't been anything big this year that's been innovative. There was a huge influx of change of play callers, which I think we're seeing a lot of new ideas be bedded in. And then we're also seeing older ideas kind of being played out and probably manufactured out. It definitely feels the year of the defense for me so far this year, which I think is led to scoring being down, fantasy points being down. And I think you've ended up with this sort of lack of breakout as a result of that as well. I mean, I'm looking at rookies and I'm just thinking Emeka Ibuka might be the only rookie that is really significantly. Tyler Warren at tight end are probably like the only two rookies that kind of stand out. I mean, I know Scatterbo had a bit before he went down, but we're not really seeing elite rookie performance this year.
I thought Hampton might have, but he got injured early as well.
Yeah, and that's part of it as well. There have been some big injuries at big time.
From an injury point of view, it feels like it doesn't feel like there's been loads more than normal, but it feels like there's been a lot of key injuries. What players that get injured that might stop other players from playing. That, there's been quite a few quarterbacks in certain teams and the backups aren't necessarily particularly good, and that might have impacted them as well. There seems to be quite a lot of those type of ones.
Yeah, and I think as well we're seeing more concussions.
Yeah,
which I don't think is great.
One thing as well is since we spoke last time, there's been a change in head coach in one of the teams as well.
Oh yeah,
which not exactly a shock. Well, it's more a shock that it's taken this long, I suppose, than anything else.
So yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen Brian DeBall go probably 18 months too late. We talked about the coaching on here before. I've mentioned it a few times. I've mentioned it on other podcasts I've been on that there's been a very confused view on how Brian DeBall coaches. And yeah, it's an interesting one because, and this was the concern I had for Jackson Dart, was you got a new coach coming in. And I'm not saying Dart's been bad because he hasn't. I think Dart has been great for fantasy. I think he's been interesting, but I don't think he's proven that he's a winner in the NFL. Some of that is what he's playing with. Some of that is the play calling. It'll be interesting to see. Mike Kafka comes in now. And then Mike Kafka, probably most famously in college, played in the Outback Bowl, where he had a phenomenal day where he threw. He had 48 for 78 pass attempts for 500 yards plus 5 TDs and 5 INTs. And so he's elevated Jameis Winston to quarterback one this week with Jackson Dart out on the concussion protocol. So you've got a Jameis-like QB, and that game was played in Ray J, where obviously Jameis made his name in the NFL. It feels like serendipity that, like a Jameis style coach is going to come in and coach here.
That was sort of going to lead to some of my questions later. Not necessarily about James, but more around like Slayton and those type of players. Could any of them go off this week with him coming in?
Yeah, it's a hard one because we all know. We all know with Jameis that he has this ability to get the ball down the field. He gets vertical, that he will throw picks, etc. The problems that we have, and I think we need to consider, is how familiar is he with this playbook? I'm not convinced he's overly familiar. I think that's a concern for me. And then I would think, how much time has he had to actually play with some of these guys? Because he hasn't played. I'm trying to think of the last time Jameis Winston properly played.
Yeah, it's a while, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think he played a game last season, maybe the season before. So he's probably, in the last 3 years, he's probably played 3 or 4 games. And so that's going to be a problem in its own right, is he's so out of practice and out of rhythm of playing quarterback. So people need to get out of their heads that he can throw for 400 yards and 5 TDs, and he'll be like famous Jameis. But
I'm not really looking at it from him's point of view. I'm looking at more the impact he might have on others more than him directly. Because as you say, he's going to probably throw a ton of interceptions as well. But like, is he going to find anybody? And if you're looking for someone to plug in this week.
Yes, I mean, I think it's, for me, I think there's better options. I think Slayton, you can always throw him in here. He's always got that sort of performance there. Matt Hollins tonight feels to me like probably an interesting play because of what he did last week with no Booty, and there's no Booty in the lineup this week. And he's seeing an increase in usage. Troy Franklin has put up some good weeks. Jalen Naylor had a good week last week, and he has a good matchup this week. So I don't hate it, but I think there's probably others I prefer. By the way, I've just done some analysis on your numbers, by the way. And so your play calling question.
Yeah.
So I can tell you now that plays across the league from this point in 2025 to last year are down 4%.
It's not too much then, is it? It's a bit like...
It's a lot. Like, if you think in the scale of it, 4% across the league, there's 4% less plays.
Yeah.
Across 10 weeks. You think that's 4% a week for it works out at like almost 800 plays.
And there's probably like maybe about 7 or 8 teams that's probably mainly for as well, probably. But it does feel like that, though. I don't know why. I say I'm no expert when it comes to that side of things, but just from looking in, it felt like that.
Yeah. It's a great call out. So yeah, I'll get the team by teams and see if there's anything that statistically kind of rolls out there. But yeah, it is interesting.
I'd say the Eagles are probably one that are playing less call. They don't seem to be doing as many things, but they're still winning.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you now that the Eagles 24-25, and again, there is a bit of variance in his because depending on when they had the bye.
Yeah.
So we have to be a little bit careful that buys will play a small part in certain teams' numbers, where if they had a late buy last year versus an early buy this year, right? So we have to be a little bit careful reporting this as like 100% fact without mapping that out. But yes, the Philadelphia Eagles do look like they have dropped about 65 to 70 plays, which is about 10%. But if they had a late buy, then that kind of tracks.
So they were in 2024. They were on a buy in 5.
Week 5.
And this year they were on a buy.
Okay. So yeah, so then they've dropped a significant amount then. So yeah, they've dropped like 12-13%.
That's
So that is quite significant. So I'm actually just that doc that you and I have got, I'm just going to run these numbers so that you can see them, pull out anything interesting. That doesn't work. Okay.
So from a Giants point of view, then who do you think they're not going to appoint anybody properly, are they, till the season's over?
Unless someone magical comes along and they want to get a jump. If they have a guy, then there's always a consideration that there could be someone there. But yeah, I think for me, I look at them and think Kafka will probably have the reins for a while. We know he's an offensive-minded coach. He's a former quarterback. He's not called too many plays in the NFL. He's quite a young coach as well. So it's going to be interesting. This week is a bit of a free hit, I suppose, because you got Jameson, who's played like 4 or 5 games in the last 4 years. So I'm not too convinced that you're going to get loads out. I think I would stick to pretty narrow tree. You might sprinkle Slayton and sort of gamble on there being some upside, but it is a gamble.
Yeah.
Wandale feels pretty safe. And then you've got, Tracy will get a bit of volume. He seems
Theo
to be the
Johnson
lead.
could be the play.
Pardon?
Theo Johnson could be the play this week.
A little bit as well. Could be an interesting. But, I mean, Jameis has never statistically peppered tight ends. He's had good tight ends in his career. But how much of that is a Jameis thing? How much of that is a scheme thing? Yeah. Is he going to be the good soldier? Is he going to go off-piste? In truth, we don't really know. Again, when you've got a guy who's bounced around different teams, the Jameis I know says he won't care and he'll do his own thing because that's the type that we've seen. And I go on what I know versus conjecture. Yeah. But I don't like the bottom line is when you don't play the quarterback position every week, your reaction times slow down. The way that you read the game, and you can have acres of experience, but it takes you time to really kind of get going and play. Yeah. And he's playing in a big market with a team that's struggling. That pressure is going to really play on him a lot as well. And when Jameis is like that, he can just go absolutely like crazy. Like he can throw 3 picks in 4 drives. Like we're talking this kind of thing is possible with him. I kind of think I look at him archetypally. I think he'll use Wandale a lot. I think Slayton will get a bump. I'm not sure that Theo Johnson is a guy I'm sort of leaning on. I've kind of got him on the end of the back end of QB1 because the one thing I do know is if Jameis can get the offense moving, they'll get red zone trips, and then that will boost Theo Johnson's profile. He will like to throw to a tight end in the end zone, or especially in the red zone area. So if he can get the offense moving, I'm not convinced on the ground game. I think that ground game is going to struggle against the Packers. And I think the way I look at this, and we've seen the Packers just shut down offense after offense all season, I do think it's going to be a real struggle for Jameis Winston. There's that the over-under at the moment is, the line moved backwards when Dart was ruled out. It opened at 43.5. It's now moved to 42.5 over-under. So
-7 as well, isn't it? For they're about 7 points favorite.
You got 2 teams that aren't, again, with Jackson Dart, they've moved them back a point, which makes sense because Dart was getting stuff done. He's running in touchdowns. He's getting the sticks moved. Yeah, I look at that game, 42.5. There's a very strong candidate for the under there at 42.5. So I think if you're looking at Jameis Winston's come in and put up 20 fantasy points for you, yeah, I don't love it. What I will also say is this. I was on a waiver wire needing a quarterback this week, and I had the choice of Jameis Winston, and the usual, like Dylan Gabriels and the Tours, and there were a few others down there. And I just think when all much of a muchness at the bottom, like the bottom 5, bottom 6 quarterbacks in the league, or even bottom 8, at least Jameis gives you a bit of hope. Like there's no circumstance in the world of my ever starting Dylan Gabriel as a quarterback unless he's the only available quarterback. You got Davis Mills. I've got Davis Mills ranked above Jameis Winston this week because of the matchup.
Yeah,
that's where I'm kind of bottom 5 on Jameis this week as a quarterback because I just don't think he's going to be ready. I think the Packers D is going to be great. I think it's going to be a tough place, and I'm not expecting fireworks from him. But I would start him in the hope that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Vince is so right here. The biggest problem with Winston being the starter is we'll have to watch the whole game for the garbage time production. But, I mean, Winston's just crazy. Like, there's every chance he gets benched in this game. Like, he could throw 5 TDs, he could throw 5 INTs, he could get benched, he could eat a W. Like, all bets are off with Winston. Like, trying to predict what Jameis Winston will do week to week is just not possible anymore. My logic says he's not going to do much, but he could be QB1 on Monday, and we could go, right, okay.
Yeah, and isn't it?
All range of outcomes are there.
I'm just looking at your sheet that you sent me. I've just threw it into Excel. I'm just having a little look at some of it. So, like, if the Steelers had their if they had their bye week in the first 10 weeks of last season, like they're like nearly 80, almost 80 snaps less at this point this season.
Yeah. And then Tampa take a bit of a hit, but they had a late bye last season. But there's definitely a few teams in here. Commanders stand out as a huge one as well. They haven't had a bye this season either.
Well, they've had what's name have had a bye, but I don't know if they've had an early one last year. Baltimore, because at the moment they're 120 snaps ish less than what they were at this point last season.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
So yeah, we might have stumbled onto something there. But it just a lot of it comes back to the fact that how much you have to get right at the beginning of the season as well now, because of people being switched on, that you have to try and leave yourself a plenty of out in your draft. So like when you're picking your bench players, that you've got to think of the range of outcomes for those players, that if this happens, I've got this player, if that happens, I've got this player, and sort of plan ahead that way as well, instead of just going for middle of the road players, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think the danger with it is this, that if you continue to bank on poor performing teams for offense, you're bang on a recipe for trouble.
Yeah.
Like for me, I would much rather take players who are maybe not the focal point of a good offense, but they're on a good offense, they're going to move the ball and get points.
Yeah.
Then taking the focal point on a really bad team that will just stifle and will struggle. And I think that's kind of where I am. And you'll have outliers to that, and you'll have bad players on bad teams put up amazing runs of form for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
But it will run out. It always does. So, you know, the old adage of wanting to pick players on good offenses is kind of where you need to be. If that offense isn't doing anything, you kind of need to cut ties. And you're seeing that now with the Packers, you're seeing it with the Panthers, you're seeing it with a lot of teams. But then there are teams that are giving you the Tennessee Titans. But then you're seeing this with New Orleans under Tyler Shook seem to be doing something a little bit better. It's a slow burn, but you can see that there's some positivity there. There is something that is growing. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be good enough to be a long-term fantasy quarterback or even an NFL quarterback, but I've seen changes in the way that team plays with Shook versus Spencer Rattler, and it's less chaotic. It feels like it's a functional NFL offense with the root of it going better with someone like Kellen Moore at the helm. I feel much more bullish about some of the players on the New Orleans Saints than I did 3 weeks ago. So you have to look for those sort of changes as well. And Vince is right here about the Steelers, most confusing division leader in the NFL. Don't know what to make of either their offense or defense. And it's funny, right? Because I was having a conversation with someone today about the Steelers. And the Steelers are a team that are the epitome of mediocrity. And I don't mean this with any disrespect, because I think you'll find there probably aren't bigger fans of Mike Tomlin than me. But I just have this feeling that Mike Tomlin is the victim of his own success, that he's a good enough coach that he will get teams that aren't particularly good to 8, 9, 10 wins every season. But he never brings, because of that, he hurts himself with the future talent pool, and they never seem to have the talent that gets them anywhere near a decent playoff run. So he might get them to the playoffs, and then that might be considered success. But he never goes anywhere. I can't remember the last time Mike Tomlin won a playoff game. It's got to be a few years. And part of that's the talent that's on the roster. And part of that is, I think, that when you're the coach, and I think of other sports where you've got a longevity coach, right? There isn't anyone there that wasn't bought in and coached by this coach at that organization. So the messaging gets a bit stale. It's a bit old. He's a bit old school. They don't know anything different. Yes, okay, people like Aaron Rodgers will probably have come in and tried to do things a bit different. But if Mike Tomlin has the stranglehold in that organization, as I think he does, that team is pretty much just going to be a solid, competent, coached team that will get 8 to 10 wins a season and do nothing else. Yeah. And it doesn't have that spark that's going to turn it into a Super Bowl team. And the Steelers just don't fire coaches. They've had 3 in 50 years. Like they just don't get rid of coaches. So it is what it is with them. A couple of questions in here. Which side would you rather have rest of the season? Josh Allen and Jameson Williams, or Caleb and Rashee Rice? And this one's really easy for me. I don't know about you. I want to hear your thoughts first.
Well, I was listening to your What's Name this morning, your Patreon, so that sort of influencing my decision here a little bit. I also listened to another video today about, and they were talking about JMO as well, because he's taking play calls, isn't he, all of a sudden, and he started doing his play calls last week, and he started targeting Jameson more. So I would be going for the first one. Rashee Rice, obviously, I really like. But when you combine the points that those two outcomes are going to get, if it's PPR anyway, I would say Allen and Jameson probably win by about maybe 4 or 5 points a week, something like that.
So Jameson Williams in the last 2 weeks has had 17 targets where he's caught 10 of them for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. Last week with Dan Campbell taking over the play calling, he had 118 yards and a touchdown, and it was his 3rd touchdown in 4 games, and he had 6 receptions and 7 targets. So the tide is turning on Jameson Williams, and a lot of that is because of the fact that Dan Campbell has come in and is taken over the plays, and he's taken over the play calling. He's like, I've got a dynamic first-round receiver here. I am sitting here and I'm going to hammer him to literally get us results. So absolutely looking at this and thinking that Jameson Williams is arrow up. And Vince has made a really great point here that TD regression for Rice, that is absolutely in the range of outcomes. You look at the schedule, the fantasy schedule that the Chiefs have. They have the worst wide receiver and the worst quarterback fantasy schedule for the rest of the season and in the fantasy playoffs. They got some really tricky games. So I do think that's going to influence a little bit. Now, Rice is good enough to overcome those to a degree, but I think he caps the ceiling. So I'm not saying here that it's a fade, because they've got the worst schedule. I'm not saying that categorically. What I'm saying is it caps the upside.
The upside.
And ultimately, good players will overcome those situations and still put up good results. But to do it consistently, it's going to ding a little bit. You need to have a couple of soft games in the schedule to pad your numbers a little bit. And I feel like he's had those, and now he's got a tough schedule coming in. So, I'm 100% on the Allen and JMO side for the rest of the season.
It's not by much, but the funny thing is what we've just been talking about by snap counts. The Lions are actually on more snap counts this season than they were last season, only just. But everyone else a lot of the others seem to be going lower. They're actually gone up. So if that carries on, he's going to get more opportunities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A few more questions in the chat here. Flacco or Rodgers? I don't know what the context is. If it's 6-point TD or 4-point TD. If it's week 11, is it rest of the season? George, come back and let us know, and we'll pick that one up. Alex says, I traded Nico and Barkley for JSN and ETN week 4, then later I traded ETN and Gadsden for Booker. What do you think of your trades? Yeah, I'd love to be in a league where people were doing those kind of trades. I can't seem to do a trade for love nor money at the moment. People aren't taking my calls.
I'm doing trades, you're telling me they're bad ones.
Well, one is one, but you didn't wait. I was busy, and then I saw your message, and I was like, don't do that.
Yeah. I'm just going for it. It's more of a gut than an actual a gut feeling of how Rico Dardle's actually playing at the moment, more than necessarily his strength of schedule and the teams they're playing against and stuff. It just feels like he's the man at the moment for that team, and maybe got that completely wrong. But yeah, for anyone who's listening, I swapped Rico Dardle for George Pickens. And Murf just laughed at me basically.
I didn't. You just asked the question: would you trade?
Yeah,
Rico would I trade George Pickens for Rico Dowdle? And I went, no. No other word was just no. I was just like, no, I wouldn't. Like, no.
It's a charity league. It's not gonna. It's and I'm 7-3 already, so I will get to the playoffs at minimum. And I was short of running backs, and I was struggling to get one. And it just felt like I actually tried to sell him AJ Brown first, and he was having none of the AJ Brown, so he asked for Pickens instead.
I would probably get. I mean, I think AJ Brown. We talked about.
I've got Devontae Smith though in the same team. So
okay, yeah. So he's the one I would have. So if you'd sold Devontae Smith for him, I would have been like, yeah, okay, I'm okay with that.
He wouldn't have took that though. So,
okay. Yeah. I mean, Pickens or Brown and rest of the season is an interesting one. I probably have them very close.
Yeah.
Just because the Eagles have a great schedule coming in.
Yeah,
one of the things I did talk about on the Patreon cast, and you can subscribe to the Patreon cast for free for 7 days. So you can hit the patreon.com/5yard rush. I'm going to put it in the chat. You can sign up for free for a week, and you can try it out. And what you'll do is you'll get access to the Patreon cast. I dropped that this morning. And I did a lot of stuff. Basically, it's like a massive brain dump, okay? There's no rigid structure. It's what I find interesting from the past week, what I think is really interesting going forward, some trends, some statistics, bits and pieces, right? I talked about today, I spent 30 minutes talking about running backs. And I pointed out that since 2012, there has never been more than 7 players that have broken 300 touches. We're week 10 done of the season. 17 players are on course to break 300 touches. That's not going to hold. So I broke down who I felt are the candidates to fall short of that and where there's regression in touches over the next few weeks. So, and I put different theories out there, and a lot of it is conjecture and using some analysis and experience for that, and just basically putting an analyst's head on trying to predict trends with data of where touches have been going the last few weeks, and looking at potential scenario planning as well. So I do recommend it. Do check it out. Has been another question in the chat.
I was just going to say it was really good today's one. There's so much information in there about planning for the rest of the season, from strength of schedules, but also around players you might want to shift, because most trade deadlines are in the next week or two, and some of them have obviously already gone as well. But like, of players that you might want to try and shift now while you can still get rid of them, and the players to focus on as well. So there's a lot of information in there. To the point where I was listening to it, and then I'll probably go back and listen to it again at some point, because there's so much info.
So Vince has asked me, why is that happening? Healthier seasons, game scripts, and it's bizarre. I will say that typically at this point in the season, obviously more than 7 will be on pace for that, and injuries tend to hit. So there's a couple of reasons, Vince. One is weeks 11 to 16 are where you'll see the most amount of propensity of running back injuries. And that's something I've looked at over the last 10 years. You'll get a 40% higher rate of injury at this point of the season now that we're entering than we will before or after. And the reason of that is kind of like that red zone body, that players are literally at the limit and they almost go beyond the limit. And then just the amount of workload has led them to a higher propensity of injury risk. So there were players on that list that have long-term history of injuries. There are ones that I'm putting asterisks by, going, these are players I'm probably going to take the handcuffs on, because them surviving through it all is less likely than them not surviving. And that's kind of where I'm at. So part of it as well, in the fantasy playbook, I talked about kind of bell cows were kind of going out of fashion around about 2020 to 2022, that people didn't want to rely on one running back, that they wanted to have a committee and then kind of just rotate the work and have different functions and different roles. And then what we've seen is the talent coming through college the last few years. We've started to see some really good running backs, not necessarily 2024, but the previous years before that, and then this year, add your deeper running back classes. And that's because in college, there's a higher propensity to run the football than there were in the past. You kind of go through seasonal trends. This always happens with running backs. You go through periods where running the ball is really fashionable, and then you go through periods that throwing it a lot more is fashionable. And so we're in a phase now where the run is starting to increase a little bit. And I mapped out what that has looked like over the last 14 years. And then I looked at sort of the last 5 and tied that into some injury work as well. So there's some interesting pieces in there that I've done. So I would say this point in the season, you'll see more injuries. You'll start to see the week 12, week 13, week 14, week 15. You'll start to see running backs go down, typically.
And rested as well.
And then you'll start to see some workload shifting where there's scenario planning for playoffs, contractual. You, for example, are the Vegas Raiders silly enough to run Ashton GT out there for 25 touches a game, knowing that they can't do anything this season? Or are they going to stockpile him for next season? Like, good teams will make good decisions there and start to cap his workload and just shift it to Mostert. Others, really bad teams, will just continue to run him. So we'll see what happens there. But there are some scenarios there.
There's a few teams, isn't there, that you were thinking about like that, the likes of Barkley and
Barkley. So Barkley, Indianapolis. I won't spoil it all, but there's a few teams in there that I sort of highlight, and I go through each one and give a view of what I think is likely to happen. And you know, in the past, I've highlighted potential. I've called players before an injury's happened that this is a player I don't expect to get to 350 touches. And every single week now, I'm going to start looking at this in more visibility in terms of players that are just high propensity risk for injury because of the amount of workload, if they're not managing that workload. So we'll start looking at the touches per week now and start to see how that's being managed. What I will say is that I'm a guy in England noticing this trend over time. There are far smarter people than me in the NFL who must realize this and therefore do something about it, and therefore reduce the workload to stop this from happening. So I'm also calling that that it's either going to be they've realized that a running back is close to injury and therefore we're going to reduce his workload, or we're not smart enough to pick that up and we're going to run him to the ground. So we're just trying to hedge a little bit where elite performance can take a dip 5-10% and what the impact of that could be. But that's all in the Patreon cast. Will's asked, and he's been waiting patiently, Besha, would you do Swift, McMillan, and either one of Pearsall, BTJ, and Tracy for Bijan? No. No. 1, I hate 3-for-1 players. 2, Bijan is very much on my list of players who I'm concerned with workload for the rest of the season. Because, let's be honest, if the Carolina Panthers beat the Atlanta Falcons, they're finished. Their season is finished. So are you wheeling Bijan out there 25 times a game? You're probably not. You got enough of an investment in him to where you're not doing that. So I just don't want part of... I don't want part of that. And admittedly, you're looking at the players here. That 3-for-1, I mean, I don't love 3-for-1s. And like, I get it that you'd be upgrading Swift, but losing McMillan, who's a solid wide receiver 2 most weeks, and also on top of that, Pearsall, who could usurp up, Brian Thomas Jr., who should be continuing to do bits if he's healthy, Tracy is a depth piece. Like, no, it's far too much. I couldn't get there. Yeah, I couldn't get there, mate. No, especially with how many people you got to start there. So in a 3 flex, 3 wide receiver league, yeah, no chance. No chance am I giving up that kind of capital because you only have to start 2 running backs. So I would be giving that up, especially in a 3 wide receiver league where that value of wide receiver does go up. You've got a good wide receiver core there. I wouldn't be breaking that up for Bijan.
The funny thing with Swift as well is he actually does better than people think that he does as well. He's not very fashionable, but he still does okay. And Pearsall, if he gets Purdy back, that could change quite a bit as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, I look at that and think, I'm going to be really careful in how I caveat this phrase. But from an analytical perspective, I would say that Bijan Robinson is a winning asset for the remainder of the 2025 season. I think Bijan Robinson is a declining asset for the remainder of the 2025 season because I don't think the Falcons are in playoff contention. I don't think on offense they have any clue what they're doing. I think they're going to cap Bijan. They should. If I was the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, I'd be going down to Raheem Morris and saying, I don't want to see that kid playing. I don't want him to see him. I want to see the snaps drop to 70%, maybe less. And I don't want to see him touch the ball more than 10, 15 times a game. You've got Tyler Algier, who's highly effective. Just run him. Protect the franchise. Like Bijan Robinson is arguably one of the most important pieces for that franchise next season. And again, Algier's a good back. Like he's not nothing. Like we're not talking about pulling a guy off the street to come in. Algier in the red zone at the goal line, he's very, very effective. He's a very, very good running back, and he will do a job. And your production isn't going to lose huge volumes here. It's just take him out of the receiving game. You know, have him just run the ball a few times. Get a third wide receiver in there. Whatever you got to do, but just limit your liability on, because the worst thing the Falcons can do right now is they lose the season, and then in week 16 they roll Bijan out there and he gets injured and he tears an ACL, and he's out next season. And then the first question is, why is he out there now? Like, whether you finish with 4 wins or 6 wins, it's irrelevant, or 8 wins, whatever it is. If you're not making the playoffs, like, what are you shooting for? Like, they're in the range for a top 6 pick right now.
The only issue is the fact that you keep saying bad teams make bad decisions.
Yeah, but I don't think they're a badly run organization.
Yeah. Okay.
I wouldn't put them in the category of the New York Jets and other organizations.
Yeah, or the Giants.
Yeah, I don't think historically they've made, like, people questioned the Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. thing. I kind of think, like, they saw a free agent quarterback, and then they saw a quarterback they loved in the draft, and they weren't sure they were going to get him. So rather than betting on the draft, they got the guy. They put outs in his contract. They had the cap space to do it. It wasn't putting them under significant amount of cap strain. And then you go and get your guy. Like, I don't hate that plan. Like, it's weird, but I don't hate it. Like, it's weird. I wouldn't say it's smart, but they took insurance. They took insurance. There's like, if we don't get our guy in the draft, we got Kirk Cousins, we'll punt it for another year.
But what you're saying about Bijan, does the same apply to Drake London?
No. I think for a couple of reasons. I think that if you listen, the whole NFL knows what Bijan is, right? There isn't a referendum on whether you can coach Bijan to be effective. I think that's been proven. There is a question mark about Michael Penix Jr. Is Michael Penix Jr. going to be the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons in 2026? Logic would predict it. He would. But I don't think that's a done deal. You change coaches, there's every chance he could go out in the wash. So I think if you are trying to evaluate Michael Penix, you kind of need to give him the tools. And you could argue, well, he should have Bijan Robinson, I don't think that assesses whether he's a good quarterback. Algier as well. I harbour this point that Algier is a very capable running back. He's not a nothing running back. So I think you have to run Drake London out there to evaluate your quarterback. There is an argument that you shouldn't, but if you're not 100% sure that Michael Penix is your franchise quarterback, you kind of have to leave everyone out there. And I think that's where they are. So, yeah.
There's in the last few minutes, Garrett Wilson's just gone on IR.
Oh, wow. That's a strange one. Okay. Yeah, so I would say that's him for potentially the fantasy season then.
It looks that way. Yeah, I'd say.
Wow, the Jets then all of a sudden become really, really awful to watch.
Breece Hall better or worse? Is it worse?
I think Breece Hall could get killed. I genuinely feel like we could see the end of Breece Hall's career because they're going to have to run more. If with that news, I'm picking up Braden Allen everywhere because they've got no passing game. They've got none.
Yeah,
they threw the ball 11 times last week. It was a joke. I know they won the game, but they don't trust either quarterback they've got in the room to throw the football. And now you've taken the only player that gets you any form of positive yardage. Like, the question's going to be, who should we pick up as wide receiver for the New York Jets off of waivers? And the simple answer is no one. Just stay clear. I don't even care if someone did. Mason Taylor now is probably the biggest arrow up. He's probably the only player there. Sorry, Vince is right. I said Braylon. Braylon is done for the year. Isaiah Davis is who I did mean. Sorry. Isaiah Davis is who you want to go and get because I tell you now, Breece Hall, if he sees an uptick in work, he's going to get cooked. And then all of a sudden, that's going to be him gone, and then all of a sudden, you're there. So yeah,
it's out the blue, wasn't it? I thought he might be out for a game or two, but didn't expect him to be going on IR.
Yeah, I mean, he was a player I wasn't too high on this season, mostly because of Justin Fields. So I don't have loads of exposure to him, but
I don't either, to be honest. Not much.
Excuse me, but that is quite a shame. Oh, yeah. I hope he recovers for sure because the league does need good players. Is there anything else off that sheet you wanna cover?
We'll come back to that sheet. Just a couple of things before I look at that sheet is just looking at like key this week, obviously for people that are looking to try and get into those playoffs.
Yeah.
So from a James Winston was one questions around. Another one was around, and you sort of covered it before where you talked about AJ Brown. Was that AJ Brown versus Devontae Smith? Because it felt like at one point Smith's targets and stuff were actually going past AJ Brown's, or it could just be a coincidence at the same time. As what you thought about that?
Yeah, and I think that there's a world where people tend to think that they follow the initial trend of, oh, well, Smith is flavor of the month. I would look at that, and the usage where Smith went absolutely great guns was 100% against the Vikings was a scheme tactical decision as opposed to just something that changed overnight. Let's get this right. AJ Brown is a better wide receiver than Devonta Smith. They're two very different wide receivers, but AJ Brown gives you the ability to win inside and outside. He has a much bigger range of skills. He has a better catch percentage. He wins more contested catches. He gives you opportunities to win all over the field. Devonta Smith is a speed guy over the top. Maybe doing him a slight disservice with his route running, but you know, he beats people with speed, but he's not going to win those big contested catches. He's not going to be a big red zone guy. So when you've got that utility and you've got a player who can win in different ways, I'm always going to take that player. He's got everything else that would point to him being the guy. He's got the big money contract. He's got the faith of the GM. They traded multiple picks for him. He's got that relationship already steadied in, and they got a great schedule coming in. So AJ Brown, for me, is on the fringes of the wide receiver 1 conversation. I still think Devonta Smith is a wide receiver 3 rest of season.
Okay. So just a few players that you're higher on than probably consensus from a quarterback point of view. You've got Stafford up at 7. So I think Stafford's normally 10 to 15-ish, but he's quite high this week at 7. Flacco you have at 10, which again is higher than probably what a lot of people might have him as. Mariota at 12. So they were 3 that jumped out at me from a QB point of view.
All of those 3 games are the highest over-under games on the slate, with the exception of the Bears, Vikings, Bucks, Bills, I think. And
then there's, on the flip side to that, I think Bo Nix at 20 is probably the lowest I've seen you have him probably this season.
That offense isn't running well. The Chiefs' D's are pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good defense, and coming off a bye too, they're going to be healthy. I haven't seen enough out of that offense to be more confident on, and it's not a Bo Nix slight. It's just that whole offense as a whole. So I've dinged everyone as a whole.
Yeah. And then the other one, which I thought you had at 24 already, and I was looking at it, and based on what we've just said, it might change. You've got Justin Fields at 24, and I'm just wondering, does he stay at 24 now that Wilson's gone as well?
I don't think that changes too much for me.
He can't reach him with his throws anyway.
Yeah, and I just think he'll get it with the legs.
Yeah,
I think he'll just run more.
So that leads me to one other point that it's been mentioned a few times before, but Mitchell, because I'm just looking through the depth chart at the Jets and trying to figure out who their wide receiver 1 is actually going to be, because they're all that bad. Maybe Mitchell all of a sudden, because they've just got him in, maybe they do start using him a bit more.
Yeah, but it takes time, right? It's not a running back where you're coming in and you're learning lanes and gaps in the offensive line.
Yeah.
The playbook is 80 to 160 pages long. You have to learn all the phraseology, all the terminology. You have to learn the cadence, the rhythm, the steps, the motions, the pre-snap calls, the post-snap calls, the audible calls.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like as a wide receiver 2 or something, but I'm talking more as a dart throw that if you were desperate. Like,
but this week I don't think he's going to have enough time.
And there's only 2 teams on a bye as well. So
yeah, the problem is you. So I talked about this on the Patreon cast with Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
Rashid Shaheed ran 62% of routes last week. And that's high for a player who doesn't know the playbook. And he's quite an experienced NFL player. I just can't get there this week. Rest of season, he becomes an interesting ad.
Yeah.
Not as anything I would expect to come true, but as we talked about it when we did the trade deadline, I look at that and there's something there that makes me kind of go, okay, I'll buy in a little bit and we'll see what happens. Not expecting it, but there's a chance. But this week, absolutely not. He just won't know the book.
It strikes me as the type of one that, when you're in that final, I remember last season, Valdez Scanlon, and you were throwing him in lineups all over the place as that one player that might go off. It feels like he could be that type of player, if you're desperate right at the end and you need someone just to make a difference and just see, just go all in. He could be that type of player.
A little bit. I worry about how much time he's going to get to be like that. At least MVS has been on the roster, he's been done in preseason,
and feels as bad.
And then there's that element as well. It's going to be interesting. I'm intrigued enough to add him in a few deep leagues and see what happens. But I think it's an optimistic hope, not something backed on science.
And then getting away from quarterbacks, running backs. 2 that I thought you were particularly high on this week was Jaylen Warren at 5 and Dowdle at 8. My man Dowdle for the week.
I mean, Warren's pretty simple. He's playing the Bengals.
Yeah.
Probably the worst rushing defense we might have ever seen. And your man Dowdle, I just think it's a tight game that the Panthers have to win. I can see them leaning on Dowdle as that explosive player against the Falcons to try and generate the offense for them, because that's their blueprint to success right now. And it's a must-win game for both teams. And in those close games, that's where I'm looking at it.
Yeah, what's name worries me. Henry, because I really need Henry to do something. And sorry, just put my charger back in because battery's going dead. The what's name? He's in that league, the one that I really need to do well in. And my running backs are sort of really struggling all of a sudden. This is Henry, and the other one I had highlighted was Walker down in 25th, and I have both of them in the same team, and they're killing me at the moment. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel for either of them?
I think it will improve for Walker. I don't necessarily think it'll be this week, but I think it will usurp out. It will come good. October was a pretty bad month for Kenneth Walker. I think it will trend upwards for him, but I don't think it will necessarily start this week.
Okay. What about Henry?
Yeah, I mean, it will definitely trend up for Henry. It's a case of when and not if. This week, it's an interesting one with that matchup against the Browns. There's two schools of thought. If they are miles ahead, then that's really bad.
Yeah.
We kind of need Quinch and Judkins to kind of have a really good game in this one to keep it close so that Derrick Henry has to play and get the opportunities. So I worry that this could be a blowout, and if it's a blowout, they're going to go to Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill to see it out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I don't want to happen. But yeah, I could see it happening. And then wide receivers, two that jumped out at me. You have Waddle at 10, and you've got Pickens at 13. So that they were quite high compared to consensus.
Yeah, I think Waddle's a simple one. Just the fact that they will be feeling themselves after that win, the Dolphins, that they'll start to feel like there's a bit of momentum going, rightly or wrongly, and I think they'll go, well, let's go for more of that. And I think the matchup kind of suits them a little bit against the Commanders, who are banged up galore.
Yeah.
So I look at that and think, yeah, there should be a pretty good one for Waddle to take advantage of. Who was the other one? Sorry,
Pickens.
Yeah, Pickens again. I just think I look at that matchup. I think there's a lot of points on the table there, and I want to get as much exposure to that as possible. The Raiders are just bad, and I think as well, I look at this and think this is a great opportunity to give CeeDee Lamb a little bit of a less, get him his touches early, get him his points early, and then rely on Pickens for the garbage time to boost him up. So we could get to a point in like the third quarter where, Lamb's got over 100 yards and he's got a tutty or two, and then like, okay, sit down, big dog, and Pickens comes out for the fourth quarter and puts a load of garbage time points up.
Hopefully it goes to Ferguson instead, because I've just...
I can go to all of them, to be honest. I think all three could really eat up a lot.
And then a couple that you were lower, and you've got Tet at 26, and obviously we've already talked about the Broncos. You've got Sutton at 31, so you don't need to talk about him, but Tet, you're low on him. Tet 26 is quite low as well, I thought.
It's just purely because I'm giving respect to the Falcons D. That is a pretty good elite D. They will put him in double coverage situations. They will try and narrow the exposure to what he'll be able to do after the catch.
And there's nothing jumping out really at tight ends. I know you seem to have had Andrews like 15 to 20 most of the season, but this week he's in 9. I guess it's the matchup, isn't it, against Cleveland? Yeah,
matchup's a big piece, and I think he's got in the box the last couple of weeks with Lamar Jackson. That's a relationship they trust. I'm purely banking on him to get in the box again this week, and that's how I see that happening.
And then what's-name seems to be on the rise, just consistently getting targets. Schultz as well, isn't he? He's 11 in your rankings.
Especially with Davis Mills in there now. You look at that situation and think with Davis Mills, he likes that safety blanket underneath. He likes to have a big target to aim at. So it should work out nicely.
He got ruled out properly today a couple of hours ago, didn't he, with his concussion still as well?
Yeah, there was Davis Mills this week.
And then there's just one player there that I was listening to on your what's name this morning. just to call out, he's not right entirely this week, but just in general to keep an eye on Greg Dulcich as well. Potentially, like he's not there yet, but he's starting to build up a few more targets as he goes.
Yeah, he's one that you put an asterisk aside and you sort of keep an eye on in the star column for games. I think this is a low-scoring game this week, so it wouldn't shock me if he blistered the box score. But I'd say down the road, you're going to see a bit more out of him. Sean Payton does like to utilize the tight end. It hasn't quite happened this season. We've seen a lot out wide, and maybe they're setting up to do something a bit different in the final third of the season. And Greg Dulcich has seen an uptick in routes run. He's seen an uptick in targets. It's kind of one of those that we're predicting something before it happens. And I see a week or two here where Greg Dulcich is going to get in the box and he's going to be fantasy relevant. Will it happen before the bye? Probably not. Will it happen after the bye? Probably at some point.
And then TST-wise, it's a lot of the usual suspects up at the top end. You know, your Patriots, your Packers, the Texans, and then the Ravens, obviously, because of the matchup this week. Falcons, Bears, Broncos. That's like the top 7 in that, not necessarily in that order, but like the ones you would expect normally each week are the ones that are up there this week based off the fixtures. That's pretty much it from that. See if they get it else. Is there anything else you want to talk about at the moment?
What I would say is looking at running back situations, and I cited Chad Parsons' research on Football Guys for a bit of this, is looking at teams that are getting high leverage outputs of their running game. So, you know, the teams at the moment that are really doing well in the running game are the Chicago Bears, the Denver Broncos, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. What that kind of means is that Swift has usurped up over Monangai, and where we've seen this uptick is because they found a really good way to run the football at the moment. And I actually think Monangai taking some of these low-value touches away from Swift is making him a slightly better running back as well. So that seems to be quite a good motion at the moment. With the Broncos, it looks like J.K. Dobbins is injured, so he could be out a couple of weeks. RJ Harvey kind of steps up now. This could be a really good time for him to kind of take over. And then the other one, and you're going to hate this, is that I'm calling an end to the Badashal Tootin era in 2025. Like, it's dead. He is done. Unless Travis Etienne gets injured, Travis Etienne is the guy for the remainder of the season. Like, you know, when we talked in the off season, I talked about Travis Etienne was going to be an amazing pick for someone that late, and you're going to look to get half a season where he gets the job, and if he continues to do the job, he will do quite well. And if you get this Badashal Tootin takeover, it will be late in the season. It ain't coming. I'm telling you now, it ain't coming. Like,
I hedged my bets. So I took tons of Tootin in Dynasty, and I took him in best ball, but I took Travis Etienne in redraft. Yeah. So I've sort of, it's not worked out as bad as I was expecting.
And the way that these injuries are all lining up, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Brenton Strange, you know, it's all wheels up Travis Etienne. Now, I'm not talking him as an RB1, but he's going to put up solid RB2 numbers for the rest of the season. And he's going to greatly, we look back at the season, the post-mortem on this. I remember having a discussion with Jim Coventry on this. And Jim Coventry was massively against the view that Travis Etienne was the guy. And I said, well, he played hurt last season. He didn't know that. And I've always felt that if he got injury-free, he's playing for a contract as well. Yeah. Probably the greatest motivation you're going to have. So I think he's going to have a good one. Appreciate you, Vince, for dropping on.
Couple of other things. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to finish this thought of teams that at the moment that aren't leveraging their running back touch as well. One is the Chargers, which, I mean, Vidal is getting a lot of touches, but he's getting them in really poor situations. And actually, if you look at the Chargers, and this includes with Marion Hampton, and something to look after here, they've only had 1 week where they finished in the top 10 as a rushing unit all season. So there is a concern there that it requires high dependency volume in low value situations in order for them to be fantasy relevant. So Kiami Vidal had 26 touches last week, and I still don't think he was a top 10 running back last week.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. That situation of if you're going to buy back into Hampton or you're buying into Vidal and all these, you have to understand they need to run the ball 20 times to be significantly fantasy relevant, because that situation is they're not running it in the high value situations, which is a big part of that. And that's the same goes to the Patriots. So we see this big performance out of Henderson last week. That's on 3 rushes, 2 of which the Buccaneers went to sleep or were out blocked or whatever you want to call it. You know, that big performance was off 3 rushes. The rest of the time, it was pretty insignificant. And when they're in the red zone, they throw the football. They don't tend to run it. So again, whether it's Stevenson, whether it's Henderson, don't look at that Henderson big blowout and go, oh, the breakouts here. That my cautionary tale to you all is that is an exception and an exceptional performance, but an exception and not a trend. So something to keep an eye on there. And then one of the really sort of bad situations at the moment that's a mess is the Washington Commanders. That kind of needs to be worked out. Now they are second to last in RB targets, which isn't particularly good. I do think that Bill will usurp back to the top, but it will need to change significantly. And then as well, the Seahawks, where their leveraged opportunities have really been capped significantly. And I actually think that will change as a team that will try to stagger the run. And so where I've got to with all this, the players that I'm looking to really sort of stash here, Brian Robinson Jr., you know, Dave Montgomery obviously is going to be owned everywhere, but Kenneth Gainwell, RJ Harvey, Emmanuel Wilson, because of the situations that the teams use the run, they're the ones that when they usurp up are going to have really good situations. The ones that I'm out on in all circumstances are Mason, Tootin, Neal, and Tajay Spears, because even if they did usurp, the opportunities they're going to get are going to be very limited.
Okay, the other thing I was looking at before was the players' usage, where the rises over the last week or two, or maybe even a bit longer than a week or two. So there's a few players on your list there that all of a sudden have started getting more of the ball as well. So the likes, I'll just read a couple of them out here. There's likes of Luther Burden would be one, Woody Marks another, Troy Franklin, Aaron Jones. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about any of them, but there's they're all on the up for sure.
And they're all players, maybe Aaron Jones less so, but Woody Marks, Troy Franklin, and
Burden.
And Burden are players we've talked about for weeks.
Yeah.
So these are not shocking to me. These are players that we've talked about for weeks on this show, that I've talked about in the Patreon cast. That these were the players. I've even talked about them on the waiver wires when I've done them. None of these are shocks. None of these are situations that I'm surprised to see. Aaron Jones is probably the exception. I did think that Jordan Mason would come back and hold that role, and that's not happened. But 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
And then there's obviously a lot of the usual suspects anyway that we've already even talked about. But then there's a few others like Joanne Jennings, Parker Washington, Kay Dotton, most of the, and Dulcich, as we talked about before, Musgrave. But most of the others are all your big names that have actually just getting more of the ball. So
well, Otten, if you remember rightly, we talked about as a 1 week play last week.
Yeah.
And it transpired, right? I said to people, as a 1 week play, Cade Otton's a good pick this week. Because lack of options, coming off the bye, Patriots as well, it kind of all made sense. He's a passable option this week. I'm less bullish on him this week than I was last week. But I think that window shuts after this week on Cade Otton. He's not a player I'm looking to invest in long term. Godwin will be back. Bucky will be back. That role goes away pretty quickly.
And then there's your wide receiver matchups. So there's a couple of, we're not going to give too much away because you should be listening to this on your Patreon cast. But let's
put them in the Discord.
Yeah, we'll put some more in it. But there's a few that jump out there that are potential ones that people wouldn't even be thinking about, because you've got like Trey Tucker as being a decent shout this week as well. But obviously, yeah, most of the information there we'll put in the Discord chat.
Yeah, I would say that I like Lockett this week as well, as an ad. Not like as a huge shouty ad, but as someone who can potentially break into the wide receiver 3 conversation. Him and Tucker have decent matchups this week. Tucker has a really good matchup, but I just think Lockett kind of fits that offense. He knows the play caller. He knows the quarterback. He doesn't need time to acclimatize because he knows that situation. So, and we saw it last week, right? So I think, I look at those two players, they might be reasonably okay this week against the porous Cowboys defense on Monday Night Football.
There was a few what's name as well. I remember you talking about, we always talk about which are the best handcuffs, and there's already some of them starting to even produce as well. Like Brian Robinson last week for the 49ers already started to see more touches, and he scored a touchdown as well.
Game script kind of dictated that game was a blowout.
But I'm not saying to start him, but what I'm saying is at least you can see that the opportunities were there, and like if it goes well, you've got him stashed on your bench as well.
Sure, but I'd say that I look at some of the performances that late window last week were all blowouts at halftime, pretty much,
wasn't it?
So they've rested CMC. They brought Brian Robinson in. I wouldn't take any production that I saw there with anything other than, well, if CMC went down, Robinson is going to be good.
Yeah,
I think we kind of knew that. So,
but he's still on a lot of waiver wires.
Yeah, I mean, I'm adding him because if CMC goes down and this goes to those touch rates, CMC's already touched the ball nearly 250 times already.
Yeah,
249, 250 touches, depending on where you get your source. So,
and everyone else in that team keeps getting injured as well. So why not him?
So, you have to look at that, and he's the premium handcuff out there. And if he's available in your league, you need to stash him. You got a player that's pretty close in the next 3 weeks, could be hitting 300 touches for the season. Yeah. He could be on course to break 400, 410 touches, and when that happens, that there's a chance that something could go wrong with him, as it has done in the past. So yeah, he's a player you got to own the backup for.
What's your how do you see? Obviously, we know who we think is going to win it, but how are you seeing tonight's game going?
I'll be in bed. I'm not staying up to watch the New York Jets. I've got no desire to watch the New York Jets. No Garrett Wilson. The lines moved to New England being favorites by 12.5, over under 43.5. I mean, I don't know.
But if you were setting your reword the question, obviously the Jets you're not touching. But if you were setting your lineups for today, and who are the ones that, from the Patriots' point of view, that are jumping out?
I'd start Breece Hall, and I'd start Mason Taylor.
Yeah, depends on obviously who else is there. But
if I was desperate, I need a tight end. Let's say I've been streaming Juwan Johnson all season. I need someone like Mason Taylor I'd throw in for a bit to see what happens. But yeah, you look at the Patriots. I mean, Drake May's a must start, obviously, leading the league in QB rating, in passing completion percentage. Henderson, I don't think he's going to have the week he had last week, but I think he'll get a good amount of value in touches. Diggs, and then I look at Diggs and Matt Collins, and I think there's something there for both of them this week. I don't think they're going to go ham. The Jets are a good D, even with the trades. So I don't see an elite performance, but I see like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 performances out of those players. Like Matt Collins, like wide receiver 3 upside, probably more realistic wide receiver 4. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 2. Kind of where I'm looking at those sort of finishes. Hunter Henry could get in the box tonight, but he is going to be a touchdown or bust play. The DST is a big start for me against the Jets. I'd want the DST as much as possible, and the kicker will be a top 10 kicker this week.
Okay. That's me done for questions anyway.
I think we call it hour 20. My voice is going. I don't know if you could tell if you've been watching this. I'm a little bit under the weather, but we persevered through. Really appreciate everyone tuning in. Do give us a like and subscribe. Really helps a lot. Write some comments. That would also be really helpful as well. More comments, more traction we get. And yeah, I've put the link to the Patreon, so give that a go. And yeah, a lot of really useful information in there. I'll clip some of it out to the socials as well. So really appreciate each and every person taking part. Week 11's massive. See you all in week 12. Until then, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.